June 11th brought water off Peru that measured 2.1 degrees above normal, while the Atlantic forecast still called for 8 to 14 storms. Then the Atlantic went quiet. NOAA flipped its sign that morning, from watch to advisory, a phrase that means conditions are present rather than forecast. The warming was already in the water. Satellites showed blue where red should have been, with no swells leaving Africa and no deep moisture building. The ocean had a lid. Numbers fell quickly as Colorado State cut its forecast, and NOAA raised the odds for a quiet Atlantic. For months, something under the surface had been sliding east at walking speed. It was not wind and not sun, but a deep hill of heat that had just reached South America. An average Atlantic gives you 14 named storms, with 7 becoming hurricanes and 3 reaching major strength. And that baseline has held since 1991. You picture a typical season with Arthur in June and a cluster in August. By late July, 4 names are on the board and maps are full of orange cones. This year, the map stayed blue even though the water was warm, which shows that warm water alone does not make a hurricane. Think of warm water as fuel and shear as a hand that knocks the stack over before it can grow. A storm needs heat stacked straight up with air rising through the same column for hours. If upper winds blow opposite to low winds, the column tilts, it tears, and heat spills sideways so the storm starves. July should have shown development in the main zone, but it showed sinking air that was dry and stable. You could see the pattern from space, as high pressure pressed down over the tropics. The ocean was ready, the sky was not. People on the coast exhaled early because it looked like a cancellation. The physics said otherwise, because something had tightened the wind above the Caribbean without cooling the water, and it had changed the ceiling. On June 11th, the Climate Prediction Center changed one word when watch became advisory. A word that means conditions are present rather than forecast. The ocean had crossed the line after months near neutral. The weekly numbers told the story clearly. Niño 3.4 was plus 0.7 and Niño 4 was plus 0.7, while Niño 1 plus 2 off Peru was plus 2.1. That is more than 2 degrees above normal against the coast, warm enough to shift the atmosphere. The center said the event will strengthen, with model guidance pointing to a 63% chance of a very strong event from November to January. That is 3 chances in 5 for a historic peak near winter. Other centers saw the same climb. The World Meteorological Organization updated its seasonal view and called for a strong event through August to October. It put the seasonal average anomaly near 2.9 degrees in key regions, which is close to double the formal strong threshold of 1.5. Super is informal at 2.0, while this forecast was near 3. The Indian Ocean was tilting positive at the same time, with warm water in the west and cool water in the east. That pairing often makes El Nino hit harder, and when both flip together, dry and wet patterns get louder. The Pacific was not flickering, it was loading. The heat did not start at the surface, but below, where the equator forms a long ribbon with warm skin on top and cold depths beneath. Between them, the thermocline slopes west to east, and in late 2025, that slope began to move. A deep swell formed in the western Pacific as warm water from 50 to 250 meters down, up to 8 degrees above normal, started sliding east. Oceanographers track this as a downwelling Kelvin wave that moves slow at 2 to 3 meters per second, about walking pace and relentless. Satellites saw the sign when Sentinel-6 Michael Freilich measured sea height, because warm water expands and lifts the surface by centimeters. From March to May, the lift traveled and showed as yellow, orange and red on the animation, and the red pattern visible at the equator on May 9th was that swell. One pulse was clear when it appeared northeast of Australia in early February, reached the Central Pacific by late February, and pressed South America by May. Off Colombia and Ecuador, the surface warmed as the cold upwelling was blocked and the thermocline deepened. Air above felt the change, which is how you get 2.9 without strong sun, as heat from below breaks through. Now pair the hot Pacific with a quiet Atlantic and ask how one kills the other, because the link is the wind above the ocean. A wave off Africa needs still air top to bottom to grow, with trade winds blowing west near the surface and similar drift near 10 kilometers. Then heat can stack, updrafts stay aligned, and thunderstorms build a tower. El Nino breaks that alignment by strengthening the subtropical jet and stretching it from the Pacific across the Caribbean into the Atlantic. Now upper winds scream opposite to the lower flow, which is vertical wind shear that tilts the column and shears the top off. Heat vents sideways instead of rising. The forecast model for August-October shows it as a red stain, where the climate forecast system marks higher than average shear over the main development region. That box runs Africa to Yucatan and is where long-track hurricanes are born. Water there can be 30 degrees and still fail, as warm fuel sits under a broken chimney. NASA phrasing is simple, because during El Nino, greater shear dissipates the upward motion of heat, and strong events push the jet even harder. That is why 2015, 1997, and 1982 all thinned, since the lid does not cool but chops. So the simple answer spreads that El Nino means the season is cancelled and you can relax. And that feels right because numbers back it. May had 55% odds for below normal, which is better than a coin flip, and CSU cut from 13 storms to 11 and then to 9. 9 is 36% fewer than the average 14, while hurricanes were cut from 7 to 4 and majors from 3 to 1. Energy forecast at 50 compares to an average near 123, which is less than half, so the logic sounds clean. Strong El Nino equals strong shear equals fewer storms, and fewer storms equals lower risk, so Florida exhales and Houston pauses. Headlines help when they say Super El Nino cancelled hurricane season. And for the open ocean, it is even true because the conveyor from Cape Verde will struggle and few waves will survive the red zone. The problem is the sentence after that truth, because people hear season cancelled and think coast cancelled. They think number of names equals number of hits, and quiet Atlantic equals safe Gulf, which is not what quiet means. Quiet means the Atlantic factory slowed, but it does not mean the workshop near shore closed, and you are counting storms in the wrong place. You want to argue that risk must fall if totals fall, which is fair. So let's test it against the analog years CSU mapped. The set is 1957, 1965, 1987, 1997, 2009, and 2015. Each an El Nino that finished below average for total storms, and each still hurt the United States. Phil Klotzbach leads that CSU team and flagged those analogs because their Atlantic pattern matched 2026 with below average overall activity across 6 cases. In 1957, Audrey struck Louisiana as a major and killed close to 400, while in 1965, Betsy flooded New Orleans and was called Billion Dollar Betsy. In 1982, Alicia hit Texas from near shore, and in 1992, a season tilted toward El Nino gave Andrew as a Category 5 into Homestead. Andrew did not cross the main box, but grew closer in, which matters because when shear chokes, the deep tropics, the share of storms born near the coast rises. They do not need a week over warm water, but need 2 days, and they feed on the hottest water closest to land. The Gulf in August is near 31 degrees, and near shore is hottest. So fewer total storms does not mean fewer chances where you live. It means the ones that can form are the ones that form near you. That is the hole in the lid, and forecasters have a name for it: homegrown hurricanes, which form within 300 miles of shore off Texas, Louisiana, Florida, and the Carolinas. They do not come from Africa but spin from a stalled front or a coastal low sitting over bathwater that is 31 degrees in August, about 88 Fahrenheit. That is pure energy, while shear above the northern Gulf can be patchy. The red zone covers the Caribbean and the open Atlantic, but the northern Gulf can sit at the edge, and for 48 hours, it can be calm enough, which is all it takes. Fox Forecast Center ran the history and found El Nino dramatically cuts the odds of a Gulf system from June through August, though dramatically is not zero. AccuWeather warned the same, noting that homegrown systems during El Nino leave less time to prepare, so you get 2 days, not 8. Ken Graham, who led the National Hurricane Center and now leads the National Weather Service, has said at every briefing that it only takes 1, and that line is math. 1 close-in major in a 9-storm season does more damage than 5 fish storms in a 14-storm season. The lid is real, and the hole sits right over the coast, while the bath is hotter than in 1957 or 1965. Put the new odds on the table, with NOAA in May at 55% below normal, 35 near normal, and 10 above, all with 70% confidence. That range is 8 to 14 named storms, 3 to 6 hurricanes, and 1 to 3 majors, a range Neil Jacobs gave at the briefing, while averages 14, 7, and 3. Then the Pacific kept warming, and forecasters began talking about raising the below normal chance towards 75%, which is 3 and 4 for a quiet ocean. Colorado State moved faster, from April 9th at 13 named, 6 hurricanes and 2 majors, to June 10th at 11 named, 5 hurricanes and 2 majors, and then July 8th and 9 named, 4 hurricanes and 1 major. Energy index at 50 compares to an average near 123, which is under half. And their words were blunt that we are extremely confident we will have a strong El Nino for the peak, and very high shear is the driver. So the count bet is set for a quiet Atlantic, but the impact bet is separate. Remember that a season can hit 50 on energy and still deliver a city flooding hit, because 2015 had 11 named, and Danny still reached Category 3 east of the windwards. In 1992, there were 7 named, and 1 was Andrew. So totals tell you how many swells were named, but not where one sat for 2 days over 31-degree water. That is the number that finds you. Widen the lens. The forecast is not just Niño 3.4. The World Meteorological Organization points to a near 2.9-degree average across key regions for August to October. That average covers 3 months over a huge patch. For scale, strong is 1.5. Super is near 2.0. This is near 3.0. The multi-model mean for June to August was near 1.8. It jumps to 2.9 for August to October. Peak in November. That is after hurricane season ends November 30th but before winter. So shear stays high through the heart of the season. Late August, September, October. Those weeks usually produce the most majors. This year they are forecast darkest red for shear. And the Indian Ocean dipole lines up. Positive phase. West warm near Africa. East cool near Indonesia. When Pacific and Indian tilt together, the jet gets a second push. Australia leans dry. East Africa leans wet. The US heat signal spreads. August to October leans warm for much of the country. Not every state. Broadly, that is why the agency says prepare now. The strong signal is not a week, it is a season. July domes were the early note. The ocean at 2.9 is the amplifier. It does not invent weather. It makes the pattern stick. Super gets thrown around. It has a line. Central Pacific at least 2.0 above normal on the Roni index. 3 real cases since 1950. 1982 to 83. 1997 to 98. 2015 to 16. Each thinned the Atlantic but did not erase risk. 1982 had 5 hurricanes. Texas still took Alicia. 1997 had 7, still near average count. 2015 had 11 named, 4 hurricanes. 1 was Danny at Category 3 east of the islands in late August. The pattern repeats. Fewer Cape Verde storms, higher share of close-in storms. And the baseline is hotter now. Atlantic water was record high in 2023 and 2024. Gulf water in 2026 is near record again. A storm with 2 days over 31 degrees has more fuel than the same setup had in 1997. That is why 9 now is not 9 then. Sea level is higher too. 6 inches above 1997 along the Gulf. A bay starts 6 inches higher before wind. Damage scales not with count but with water. That is the detail people repeat later. Not how many names were issued. How high the bath was when the one storm sat. Super does not mean safe. It means the factory that makes many storms closed. The kitchen that makes one close storm stayed open. And the ingredients are hotter. You want to push back because you have heard super before. Forecasters cry wolf every spring. And models jump between strong and very strong, while last strong still gave a hurricane. The skeptic is right on 3 points. Because seasonal forecasts are probabilities, and 55 or 75% below normal still leaves 25% for normal or above, which is 1 in 4 and not 0. The coast needs a trigger like a stalled front, a coastal low, moisture and spin, and if that does not park at the right time, no homegrown forms, and the quiet headline ages well. Warm water can punch through shear for a day, and it has, so cancelled is sloppy while reshaped is accurate. The open Atlantic is reshaped across a huge area, but the 30 miles off Galveston, Tampa, Mobile and Charleston is not. That is the part the thumbnail cuts off. You are right to distrust hype, but wrong to trust calm. So think of 1992, with 7 storms, when the national mood was quiet, and Andrew needed one night to erase that mood. June 11th was not the end of the story, but the opening of a narrower, shorter fuse. The count fell while the window for a close-in spin did not close. It shortened and moved closer. Picture the water at night where a mooring bobs near 170 west, and below it at 100 meters, the thermometer reads 8 degrees hot, not 0.8 but 8, which is the core of the swell. It does not break, but hums and moves east at walking pace, while fish feel it first. Plankton shifts, and the thermocline drops 30 meters. At the surface, the sea is 4 centimeters high, which you would not see, but Sentinel-6 does, mapping height as color with yellow on a screen in Pasadena that someone pins to the wall. In early May, that yellow tongue touched South America, and off Peru, the weekly index went 2.1, so anchovies moved and fishermen noticed before models. Air followed a week later as pressure fell in the east, rose in the west, and the Walker cell stuttered. The jet above the Caribbean ticked up 10 knots, and that was when the Atlantic went quiet, not with a storm but with a silence. A warm hill traveling at the speed you walk a dog did that, from 10,000 kilometers away, and it still has heat to give, because the peak is forecast for November. The surface has not shown all it holds, and the hill is still surfacing, so shear will get stronger before it eases. Fast forward to November, December, and January, when Super El Nino hits the west, and the same jet that chops hurricanes points at California. Strong winters push the storm track south, so California, Arizona, southern Utah, and New Mexico run wetter than normal, often much wetter, as atmospheric rivers line up like a hose. The Sierra gets buried, then melted, then buried again, while reservoirs fill as hills slide and roads close. The Northwest does opposite, as Washington, Oregon, and Idaho run warmer and drier, with more rain than snow and less snowpack to melt in spring. The Rockies split with North dry and South wet. NOAA puts odds for October to December at 81% for a very strong event, which is 4 in 5, and the chance it lasts into spring 2027 is 97%, which is near certain. So the winter pattern is not a guess, but the base, with flood risk where fire risk was in July. The same heat dome that baked the east in summer becomes the storm door for the west in winter, and the push behind that door is stronger when the ocean averages 2.9. One effect fades as another takes over, so quiet Atlantic in September becomes wet south in January, because the energy does not leave but moves north and east and falls as rain. Take the receipt from July, when the Atlantic was quiet but the heat was not, with 3 domes in less than a month. The first over the 4th of July weekend put 200 million people under extreme heat alerts, and Independence Day events in Washington and Philadelphia were cut for the country's 250th. The dome's edge through storms and power died for about 250,000 customers in New Jersey alone, so independence was indoors for many, and the cost was immediate. The Washington Post sent reporters to call counties, with Sarah Kaplan writing on July 26 that they counted at least 70 deaths from July heat domes, and the true toll is likely higher. That number matters because 70 is not a model but a count, and experts warned it undercounts because heat is slow on certificates, deaths lag, reports are patchy, and counties count differently. The dome that set the July record did not need a hurricane and needed no storm at all. Below normal hurricane counts still went with 1 to 3 majors in the forecast, and 1 to 3 majors still assumes a hit somewhere. A quiet storm count and a loud heat count can happen the same month because both are energy. One shows on satellite and one shows in emergency rooms. Night heat is what kills. The dome traps heat after sunset. That is the detail the post-count caught. Day heat makes headlines. Night heat fills morgues. New Jersey's 29 suspected deaths were mostly indoors. No cooling. Elderly alone. Windows shut. The certificate may say cardiac arrest. Cause was heat. Maricopa County knows that pattern. Arizona confirmed 40 heat deaths before July ended. That county reviews each death for heat as cause or contributing. That method finds more than a state total built from press releases. The Post found 70 nationally, while state counts showed 44. Same week, 26 extra deaths were missed by adding press clips. Cook County, Illinois had a late 60s man dead from a heat cardiovascular event. Hinds County, Mississippi had 2 seniors dead on June 27th and July 2nd. Put that next to the hurricane line. Andrew killed 26 directly in the United States. July heat beat that in 5 days without wind or water. El Nino adds heat to a planet already hot. The Secretary General said it plain. El Nino is inside the house and turning up the heat, and this is only a warm-up act. Summer 2026 was that act. The ocean at 2.9 has not peaked. July's dome becomes August's average. That is the price even if no storm comes. Turn the globe over. The same shear that calms the Atlantic feeds the Pacific. The East Pacific averages 15 named storms, 8 hurricanes, 4 majors. This year NOAA leans above normal there, 15 to 22 named. 9 to 14 hurricanes, 5 to 9 majors. Same heat, other side more spin. The Atlantic water was still warm in July and August. That warmth can fight shear for a day. It has before. Forecast shear for September is dark red but not uniform. Weak spots exist near shore. A storm that would have grown off Africa dies there. A low off Galveston does not need Africa. It sits over 31 degrees and has a short window. That is the season that hides inside a below normal label. The global seasonal update shows that shift in rain. The Pacific track is up. The Atlantic track is down. The Indian dipole tilted positive adds to that tilt. The bill writes through fall. The Gulf Bath in August is the number to watch, not total names. Names tell you about the ocean. The bath tells you about the coast. When shear eases for a day or two near shore, the bath will be waiting. Quiet on satellite does not mean cold below. It means capped. And a cap with a hole makes a jet. So stand on that strip in late August. Water 31 degrees. Air sinking over the Caribbean. Shear high everywhere, except maybe a pocket by shore. A front stalls near Panama City. A low forms near Lafayette. It has 36 hours. That is the real 2026 season. Not a parade of Cape Verde swirls. A close spin with a short fuse. NOAA can be right that the ocean was below normal. CSU can be right that 9 names were issued and energy was 50. A single county can still be wronged. That is the thing this super event cancels and keeps. It cancels the Atlantic's ability to make many hurricanes. It does not cancel the coast's chance to take one. Because that one forms near land, you will not track it for a week. You will wake to it. So the question into fall is not how quiet the basin was. It is where the one break in the ceiling opened. The wave is still surfacing. The peak is still November. No one knows which hole will matter. Louisiana in 1957. New Orleans in 1965. Homestead in 1992. That is the open threat. The seasonal forecast can be perfect on average and wrong on your street. When shear drops for 2 days in that strip, the warm bath will be there. 31 degrees. No wind above. Just heat and spin. That's when quiet becomes sudden.